The pipe wrench slipped from my grip, clanging against the cabinet under our kitchen sink. Water dripped steadily onto my forehead as I lay on my back, trying to tighten the stubborn connection that had been leaking for weeks. Hannah had been nagging me about it every morning, her voice sharp with that particular brand of irritation reserved for husbands who don't fix things fast enough. Why do you always have to know where I am? Her voice drifted down from upstairs, muffled but clear enough. I froze, wrench suspended in midair. My wife was on the phone at 11:30 at night, and she wasn't talking to me. I held my breath, straining to hear more. The old Victorian house we'd bought 15 years ago had thin walls and creaky floors that usually betrayed every conversation. But tonight, Hannah was being careful. Her voice dropped to a whisper, then rose again in what sounded like frustration. I can't just disappear, Evan. People will notice. Evan. I knew that name. Evan Morrison, senior partner at Hannah's law firm. The guy with the perfect teeth and the BMW who always managed to find reasons to work late with my wife. The wrench slipped again, this time catching my knuckle. I bit back a curse, tasting copper where I'd bitten my tongue. Above me, Hannah's footsteps moved across our bedroom floor, her voice fading as she walked toward the bathroom. I slid out from under the sink and sat on the kitchen floor, back against the cabinet, staring at the water stain on the ceiling that had been growing larger each month. Just like the distance between Hannah and me. 43 years old, and I was lying under kitchen sinks while my wife made secret phone calls to her boss. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent 20 years as a structural engineer, analyzing stress points and load-bearing capacities, but I'd completely missed the fractures in my own marriage. The floorboards upstairs creaked as Hannah moved around. I could picture her pacing, running her fingers through that auburn hair she'd started highlighting more frequently in the past 6 months. She'd been different lately. Distant, critical, always finding fault with something I'd done or hadn't done. You're so controlling, David, she'd said last week, when I'd asked why she was working so many Saturday evenings. Can't I have a life outside this house? Controlling. The word had stung because it felt so unfair. I wasn't controlling. I was concerned. There's a difference, though apparently not one my wife recognized anymore. I climbed to my feet and grabbed a beer from the refrigerator, popping it open as quietly as possible. The house had gone silent upstairs, which meant Hannah had finished her mysterious conversation. In a few minutes, she'd come down, kiss me on the forehead like she always did, and ask how the pipe repair was going. She'd smile that practiced smile she'd perfected for client meetings, and I'd pretend I hadn't heard anything. But tonight felt different. Tonight, something had shifted. The next morning, Hannah was already gone when I woke up. Her coffee cup sat in the sink, lipstick stain on the rim, and a note on the counter. Early meeting. Don't wait up tonight. Client dinner. I stared at the note, written in her careful lawyer's handwriting. Client dinner on a Tuesday. In the 3 years since she'd made partner at Morrison and Associates, client dinners had become increasingly frequent. Funny how they always seemed to coincide with Evan Morrison's schedule. My phone buzzed with a text from my old Army buddy Jake, who ran a small construction company across town. Poker tonight? The usual suspects are in. I texted back, can't. Wife has client dinner. His response came immediately. So, come anyway, unless you need permission. Permission. Another loaded word, like controlling. I deleted the conversation and poured another cup of coffee, standing at the kitchen window that overlooked our backyard. The grass needed cutting, the fence needed staining, and the garden, Hannah had been so excited about 3 summers ago, was now overrun with weeds. When had everything started falling apart? My phone rang, interrupting my brooding. The caller ID showed Morrison and Associates. David Carver speaking. Mr. Carver? This is Rebecca from Mr. Morrison's office. I'm calling to confirm your wife's dinner reservation tonight at Chez Laurent. The reservation is for 2 at 8 o'clock. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I'm sorry, what? The dinner reservation? Mr. Morrison asked me to confirm all the details were correct. Right, I managed. Thank you. I hung up and stared at the phone. A reservation for 2. Not a client dinner, a dinner for 2. Hannah and Evan. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth as the pieces clicked into place. The late nights, the new clothes, the way she'd started doing her hair differently. The phone calls and the sudden interest in privacy. The criticism and the distance and the way she'd stopped really looking at me when we talked. My wife was having an affair. I sat down heavily at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten breakfast together every morning for 15 years, where we'd planned vacations and argued about finances and celebrated Hannah's promotion to partner. The table where she'd told me she loved me just 6 months ago on my birthday. The rational part of my brain, the engineer's mind that had served me well in my career, began cataloging evidence. The unexplained mileage on her car, the new lingerie I'd glimpsed in the laundry, the way she'd started keeping her phone face down during dinner, the sudden complaints about our marriage, our house, our life together. How long had it been going on? Months? A year? I pulled out my laptop and opened our joint credit card statements, something I rarely bothered to check since Hannah handled most of our finances. The charges painted a clear picture. Restaurants I'd never been to, a hotel in the next town over, purchases at Victoria's Secret, a spa day that she'd never mentioned. My hands shook slightly as I scrolled through months of evidence of a double life I'd been too trusting or too stupid to notice. The house felt different now, tainted with secrets and lies. Every surface, every room held memories that suddenly felt false. Had she been thinking about him when she kissed me goodbye in the mornings? Had she been comparing us when we made love? I closed the laptop and walked to the living room, studying the framed photos on the mantelpiece. Our wedding day, Hannah radiant in white lace. Vacations to the mountains, the beach, Europe for our 10th anniversary. Hannah's graduation from law school, me beaming with pride beside her in my best suit. When had I become the enemy in my own marriage? My phone buzzed again. A text from Hannah. Dinner running late. Don't wait up. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, "Have fun." She responded with a heart emoji. A heart emoji, while she was out with another man. The fury hit me like a physical force, hot and consuming. Not just anger at Hannah, but at myself for being so blind, so trusting, so pathetically naive. I'd been playing the role of the devoted husband while she'd been playing me for a fool. But the anger felt good. It felt better than the hurt, better than the betrayal, better than the crushing weight of 15 years of marriage crumbling around me. Anger was something I could work with. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. If Hannah could have secrets, so could I. The Riverside boxing gym sat in the old warehouse district, a relic from the town's industrial past that had somehow survived gentrification. I'd been training there twice a week for the past 5 years, partly for fitness and partly because hitting things felt therapeutic after long days dealing with difficult clients and bureaucratic nonsense. Jerry Kowalski, the owner, looked up from wrapping hand tape around a young fighter's knuckles as I walked in. "Dave, didn't expect to see you tonight." "Needed to hit something," I said, heading for the locker room. Jerry laughed. "Rough day at the office?" "Something like that." I changed into my workout clothes and approached the heavy bag in the corner. The familiar ritual of wrapping my hands, adjusting my stance, finding my rhythm, it all helped quiet the chaos in my head. But tonight, every punch carried the weight of my anger. Every combination was punctuated by images of Hannah and Evan together. Left jab, Hannah laughing at his jokes. Right cross, her hand on his arm at the office Christmas party. Left hook, the way she'd started criticizing everything about our life together. Right uppercut, 15 years of marriage reduced to lies and secret phone calls. "Easy there, champ." Jerry's voice cut through my fury. "That bag's got a family to support." I stopped punching, breathing hard, sweat stinging my eyes. "Sorry. Want to talk about it?" I unwrapped my hands slowly, considering. Jerry had been running this gym for 30 years, had seen every kind of human drama play out in his ring. He'd been married 3 times, divorced twice, and had opinions about women that would make a sensitivity trainer weep. "My wife's cheating on me," I said finally. Jerry nodded like I'd just told him it might rain tomorrow. "You sure?" "Sure enough." "What are you going to do about it?" That was the question, wasn't it? What was David Carver, structural engineer and apparently world-class sucker, going to do about his cheating wife? I don't know yet. Well, Jerry said, tossing me a towel, whatever you decide, make sure it's something you can live with afterward. I drove home slowly, taking the long way through downtown. Our little city looked tired in the evening light, like it was ready to give up and let the bigger metropolitan areas absorb it completely. Main Street had more empty storefronts than occupied ones, and the old movie theater had been boarded up for 2 years. Hannah had always talked about moving somewhere more exciting, somewhere with better opportunities for her career. I'd resisted because I liked the quiet, the familiarity, the way everyone knew everyone else's business. Now, I wondered if that small town intimacy was about to become my worst enemy. How many people already knew about Hannah and Evan? How many pitying looks had I missed? How many conversations had stopped when I walked into a room? I pulled into our driveway and sat in the car for a moment, looking at the house we'd bought with such optimism 15 years ago. We'd painted it yellow because Hannah said it looked cheerful, and we'd spent countless weekends working in the garden, planning improvements, talking about the future. Now it just looked like a stage set for a life that had been falling apart while I wasn't paying attention. Hannah's car wasn't in the garage, still at her client dinner, probably holding hands across a candlelit table while I sat at home like an idiot. I walked through the empty house, seeing everything with new eyes, the expensive wine she'd started buying, claiming it was for entertaining clients, the new artwork she'd hung in the living room without consulting me, the way she'd rearranged the bedroom furniture, saying she wanted a fresh perspective. Fresh perspective? Right. I poured myself a whiskey and sat in my chair, the old recliner Hannah had been nagging me to replace, and tried to think like an engineer. When a structure started showing stress fractures, you had two options: reinforce it or tear it down and start over. But what if the structure had been compromised from within? What if the very foundation you'd built your life on had been slowly eroding while you weren't looking? My phone buzzed with another text from Hannah. Home in an hour. Love you. Love you. The words felt like salt in an open wound. I finished my whiskey and went upstairs to our bedroom, standing in the doorway like I was seeing it for the first time. The king-size bed where we'd made love just last weekend, Hannah going through the motions with the mechanical efficiency she brought to everything these days. The dresser where she kept the new lingerie I wasn't supposed to notice. The bathroom where she'd been taking longer showers, coming out smelling like expensive perfume. How had I missed all the signs? I heard her car in the driveway at 11:15. The front door opened and closed. Her heels clicked across the hardwood floor. And then she was climbing the stairs with that careful, quiet tread of someone trying not to wake a sleeping spouse. David? Her voice was soft, tentative. In here, I called from the bedroom. She appeared in the doorway, still beautiful at 38, still the woman I'd fallen in love with in law school. Her hair was slightly messed, her lipstick gone, her cheeks flushed in a way that could have been from wine or excitement or guilt. How was dinner? I asked. Long, she said, avoiding my eyes as she kicked off her heels. Boring client stuff, you know how it is. Right, boring client stuff. She glanced at me sharply, maybe hearing something in my tone. Everything okay? Fine, I said, just tired. She nodded and headed for the bathroom. I'm going to take a quick shower. Of course she was. Had to wash off the evidence of her evening with Evan Morrison. I lay in bed listening to the water run, staring at the ceiling and wondering how many more nights like this I could endure. How many more lies? How many more performances? How many more times I'd have to pretend I didn't know my marriage was a sham? When Hannah came to bed, she kissed my cheek and whispered goodnight, then turned away from me like she had every night for months. I lay there in the dark, listening to her breathe, feeling the distance between us like a physical presence. Tomorrow, I decided, things were going to change. I didn't know how yet, but I was done being the fool in this story. It was time for David Carver to take control of his own life. I woke up before dawn, my mind sharp and focused in a way it hadn't been for months. Hannah was still sleeping, turned away from me, her auburn hair spread across the pillow like spilled wine. She looked peaceful, innocent even, the perfect picture of a devoted wife. The irony would have been funny if it didn't make me want to punch something. I slipped out of bed and padded downstairs to the kitchen, starting the coffee maker with mechanical precision. While it brewed, I opened my laptop and began what I was already thinking of as the investigation. If Hannah could play games, so could I. Our joint checking account showed a pattern I'd been too trusting to notice before. Cash withdrawals on days when she claimed to be working late, charges at restaurants across town during her supposed lunch meetings, a hotel bill from 2 weeks ago when she'd told me she was at a legal conference in the state capital. I cross-referenced the dates with my own calendar, my work schedule, the nights I'd been at the gym or playing poker with Jake. Hannah had been careful, but not careful enough. She'd built her deception around my routine, counting on my predictability. Big mistake. The coffee finished brewing and I poured myself a cup, adding cream while I scrolled through Hannah's social media accounts. She'd always been active on Facebook and Instagram, posting pictures of her cases, her lunches, her girls' nights out. But lately, the posts had become more frequent and more carefully curated. Photos of expensive meals I hadn't shared with her, check-ins at wine bars I'd never been to, pictures with her friend Marcy, both of them dressed up for evenings I'd known nothing about. Marcy Chen, Hannah's best friend since law school, the maid of honor at our wedding, the woman who'd spent countless evenings at our dinner table complaining about her string of failed relationships. I'd always liked Marcy, appreciated her sharp wit and her loyalty to Hannah. Now I wondered what role she was playing in my wife's double life. I heard movement upstairs, Hannah getting ready for another day of lies and performance. I closed the laptop and refilled my coffee cup, arranging my face into the expression of mild contentment I'd been wearing for months without realizing it. "Morning," Hannah said as she entered the kitchen, already dressed in her sharp gray suit, her hair pulled back in the severe bun she wore for court appearances. "Morning. Big day today?" "Deposition prep," she said, pouring coffee into her travel mug. "Might be another late night." "Another late night, of course." "With Evan?" I asked casually. She paused, just for a fraction of a second, but I caught it. "Among others. It's a complex case." "I'm sure it is." She kissed my cheek, the same perfunctory gesture she'd been giving me for months, and headed for the door. "Don't wait up if I'm really late." "I won't." After she left, I sat at the kitchen table and made a list. Not a to-do list, a target list. If Hannah wanted to play games, she was about to discover that her boring, predictable husband had a few surprises of his own. First stop, Morrison and Associates. I'd been to Hannah's law firm exactly twice in the 3 years since she'd made partner, once for her promotion party, and once to pick her up when her car was in the shop. Both times I'd felt like an outsider in the sleek modern offices with their expensive furniture and hushed conversations. Today I felt like a reconnaissance mission. The receptionist, a young woman with perfect makeup and a practiced smile, looked up as I entered. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see my wife, Hannah Carver. I wanted to surprise her for lunch." "Oh, how sweet." The receptionist's smile became more genuine. "I'm sorry, but Mrs. Carver is in depositions all day. She and Mr. Morrison have been working on the Hartwell case nonstop." "Right, the Hartwell case," I said, as if I knew what she was talking about. "They make a good team." "Oh, they're amazing together," she gushed. "Mr. Morrison says Mrs. Carver is the best associate he's ever worked with. They complement each other perfectly." "I bet they do." "Well, I don't want to interrupt their important work," I said. "Maybe I'll just leave these flowers for her." I handed over the bouquet I'd bought specifically for this purpose, watching the receptionist's face carefully. Should I put them in her office or Mr. Morrison's? I know they share a lot of their case files. "Oh, Mrs. Carver has her own office," the receptionist said. "Third floor, corner suite. She's doing so well here." "She certainly is." "Thanks for your help." I left the flowers and walked back to my truck, my mind processing what I'd learned. Hannah had her own office, which meant the late nights weren't necessarily about shared workspace. But the receptionist's enthusiasm about Hannah and Evan's partnership told me everything I needed to know about how their relationship appeared to the outside world. They weren't hiding it very well. My next stop was the Riverside Diner, a greasy spoon across from the courthouse, where lawyers and cops grabbed quick meals between cases. I'd eaten there a few times with Hannah in the early days of her career, when she was still excited to share the details of her work with me. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and comfortable shoes, poured coffee without being asked. "You're Hannah Carver's husband, right?" I nodded, surprised she recognized me. Thought so. She comes in here pretty regular with that boss of hers. Nice couple. Couple. The word hit me like a physical blow. They seem happy together. The waitress continued, apparently oblivious to the fact that she was destroying my marriage with casual conversation. Always laughing, holding hands. You can tell when people are really in love, you know? Yeah, I managed. You can tell. I left money on the table and walked out, my hands shaking with rage. Not just at Hannah and Evan, but at the casual way this woman had delivered the news that my wife was publicly affectionate with another man. How many other people in this small town knew? How many other conversations like this were happening behind my back? I drove aimlessly for an hour, trying to process what I'd learned. Hannah wasn't just having an affair. She was flaunting it. She and Evan were acting like a couple in public, holding hands in restaurants, being seen together so often that strangers assumed they were married. While I sat at home like an idiot, fixing leaky pipes and wondering why my wife seemed so distant. My phone rang, interrupting my spiral of rage and humiliation. Jake's name appeared on the screen. "What's up, man?" "You sound terrible," Jake said without preamble. "What's going on?" Jake Martinez had been my squad leader in Afghanistan, the kind of man who could read people like blueprints. We'd stayed close after our discharge, bonding over our shared struggle to readjust to civilian life. If anyone would understand what I was going through, it was Jake. "Hannah's cheating on me." Silence on the other end of the line, then, "You sure?" "Positive. With her boss. Apparently, half the town knows about it." "Son of a gun," Jake said quietly. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet, but I'm not going to just roll over and take it." "Good. You want to talk about it? I can meet you somewhere." I looked around, realizing I'd driven to the lake without consciously deciding to come here. The water was gray under the overcast sky, choppy with small waves that lapped against the empty boat dock. In a few weeks, this place would be crowded with summer visitors, but now it was deserted and peaceful. "Actually, yeah, meet me at the lake. I need to figure some things out." Jake arrived 20 minutes later in his work truck, still wearing his construction clothes. He looked older than his 45 years, weathered by sun and hard work, but his eyes were sharp and alert. "Talk to me," he said without preamble. I told him everything. The phone call I'd overheard, the credit card charges, the hotel reservations, the receptionist's casual comments about Hannah and Evan's partnership. Jake listened without interrupting, his face growing darker with each detail. "How long?" he asked when I finished. "At least 6 months, maybe longer." "I've been such an idiot, Jake. All the signs were right there. You trusted your wife. That doesn't make you an idiot. It makes me something." Jake was quiet for a moment, staring out at the water. "What do you want to do about it?" "I want to make them pay," I said, surprising myself with the vehemence in my voice. "I want them to understand what they've done. I want consequences." "Okay, but you need to be smart about it. Don't do anything stupid that's going to come back on you." "I'm not going to hurt anyone. I know that. But there are other ways to destroy someone's life. You just need to be creative." Jake had always been the tactical thinker in our unit, the one who could see 3 moves ahead in any situation. If anyone could help me plan my revenge, it was him. "What are you thinking?" I asked. "I'm thinking your wife and her boyfriend have gotten comfortable. They think you're clueless, so they're not being careful. That's their weakness. How do I use it?" "Information warfare. Document everything. Get evidence. Then use it strategically to maximum effect." I nodded, feeling the first stirring of something that might have been hope, or maybe just the anticipation of revenge. "I need to know more about their routine," I said. "Where they go, when they meet, who else knows about it?" "Surveillance," Jake agreed. "But be careful. Don't get caught. And don't do anything that could be construed as stalking or harassment. Just gathering information." "Right. Information is power, and right now, they have all of it. Time to even the playing field." We talked for another hour, Jake helping me think through the logistics of my investigation. By the time he left, I had a plan. It wasn't elaborate, but it was a start. That evening, I waited for Hannah to come home from her latest late meeting. She arrived at 10:30, her hair slightly disheveled, her cheeks flushed with what I now recognized as post-encounter satisfaction. "How was your day?" she asked, settling onto the couch beside me with a glass of wine. Fine. Boring. How was the deposition prep? Exhausting, she said, not meeting my eyes. Evan and I worked through dinner. Evan and I. She said it so casually, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Must be a complex case. Very, but we're making good progress. I nodded and turned back to the television where a mindless sitcom was playing. Hannah curled up beside me, resting her head on my shoulder in a gesture that once would have filled me with contentment. Now, it just felt like another lie. David? Her voice was soft, uncertain. Do you ever think about what you'd do if things changed? If our life here didn't work out? I looked down at her, studying her face in the flickering light from the TV. Was she preparing to leave me? Testing the waters for her exit strategy? What kind of changes? I don't know. Career opportunities, maybe? New places to live? Are you thinking about leaving? She was quiet for a long moment. I'm thinking about a lot of things lately. Like what? Like whether we're really happy, David. Whether this is the life we both want. The life we both want. As if she hadn't already decided to pursue the life she wanted with someone else. Are you happy? I asked. Another pause. I don't know. Are you? It was a loaded question, and we both knew it. The honest answer was no. I hadn't been happy for months, but I'd attributed it to work stress, middle age, the natural ebb and flow of a long marriage. I'd never considered that my unhappiness might be a symptom of my wife's betrayal. I want to be, I said finally. So do I. She kissed my cheek and went upstairs to bed, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the growing certainty that my marriage was over. The only question now was whether it would end with Hannah's carefully planned exit strategy or with my own explosive revelation of her deception. I was leaning heavily toward the explosive option. I started following them on Thursday, not in some dramatic movie chase scene way. I'm an engineer, not a private detective. But our small town only had so many upscale restaurants, and Hannah's credit card statements had given me a roadmap of their favorite spots. The vintage wine bar on 4th Street seemed to be their regular Thursday night destination. I parked across the street at 6:30 and waited, feeling ridiculous and vindicated in equal measure. They arrived separately, which showed they had at least some sense of discretion. Hannah first, looking stunning in a black dress I'd never seen before. She chose a corner table with a view of the street, checking her phone while she waited. Evan arrived 10 minutes later, and I got my first good look at my wife's lover in his natural habitat. He was everything I wasn't. Tall, perfectly groomed, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. He moved with the confidence of a man who'd never been denied anything he wanted, including other men's wives. I watched them greet each other with a kiss that was definitely not professional. Watched Evan's hand rest possessively on Hannah's lower back as he guided her to their table. They sat close together, leaning into each other's conversation, touching frequently. They looked like lovers. They looked happy. The rage that had been simmering in my chest for days suddenly flared into something white-hot and consuming. This wasn't just an affair. It was a relationship. Hannah had replaced me, found someone better, and was flaunting it in public while I sat at home like an idiot. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. The camera on my phone wasn't great from this distance, but I got several clear shots of them holding hands across the table, of Evan leaning in to whisper something in Hannah's ear, of her throwing back her head and laughing at whatever he'd said. They stayed for 2 hours, sharing appetizers and wine, completely absorbed in each other. When they finally left, they walked to Evan's BMW together, and he opened the passenger door for her with the gallant gesture of a man trying to impress. I followed at a distance as they drove to the Riverside Inn, a boutique hotel on the edge of town that catered to business travelers and romantic getaways. I watched from the parking lot as they checked in together, Evan's arm around Hannah's waist, both of them laughing about some private joke. The sight of my wife of 15 years walking into a hotel room with another man was like taking a punch to the solar plexus. I sat in my truck for 20 minutes, hands shaking with rage, before I finally drove home to our empty house. I poured myself a large whiskey and called Jake. I found them, I said without preamble. Where? I told him about the wine bar, the hotel, the casual intimacy I'd witnessed. Jake listened without comment until I finished. You get pictures? Yeah, good. What's your next move? I don't know. Part of me wants to confront them right now, kick down their hotel room door and make a scene. And the other part? The other part wants to destroy them both. Smart money's on option two, Jake said. You confront them now. You give them time to spin the story, make you look like the crazy, controlling husband. But if you're patient, if you gather enough evidence, I can control the narrative. Exactly. Right now, they think they're smarter than you. Use that. I finished my whiskey and went upstairs to our bedroom, staring at the king-size bed where Hannah and I had slept together for 15 years. Tonight, she was in another bed with another man, and tomorrow she'd come home and pretend nothing had happened. But I'd know, and soon, everyone else would too. Hannah came home at 11:30 the next morning, claiming she'd stayed at Marcy's after a girls' night out. She was showered and dressed in casual clothes, but I could see the telltale signs of a night spent elsewhere. The slightly rumpled look of someone who'd gotten dressed in a hurry, the way she avoided eye contact, the guilty flush in her cheeks. How was your evening? I asked over coffee. Fun. We went to that new place downtown. Had a few too many drinks. You know how it is. I knew exactly how it was. What did you do? She asked, settling across from me at the kitchen table. Not much. Watched TV, went to bed early. She nodded, already distracted by her phone. I need to go into the office for a few hours. Some case files to review. On Saturday? Big case, she said, not looking up from her screen. Evan wants to make sure we're prepared for Monday's hearing. Evan wants. Everything in Hannah's life seemed to revolve around what Evan wanted these days. I'll probably be late again tonight, she continued. Case strategy session. Another lie, delivered with the casual ease of someone who'd had plenty of practice. Of course, I said. I'll find something to keep myself busy. After Hannah left, I drove to the hardware store and bought a small digital camera with a telephoto lens. If I was going to document my wife's affair, I needed better equipment than my phone camera. The young clerk who rang up my purchase was chatty and helpful. Taking up photography? Something like that. This is a great model for wildlife shots. Really captures the action. Wildlife shots. That was one way to describe it. I spent the afternoon learning how to use the camera, practicing with different settings and angles. By evening, I was ready for my second surveillance mission. This time, I was prepared when Hannah and Evan met at Romano's, an Italian restaurant on the other side of town. I positioned myself in the parking lot of a closed gas station across the street and documented their entire evening. The photos were much clearer this time. Hannah feeding Evan a bite of her dessert, Evan's hand on her thigh under the table. The way they looked at each other like they were the only people in the world. But the most damaging photo came at